The clips you are about to see were recorded before patch 1.13, though nothing has changed really after the patch with this setup. Rakshasa got a buff, a weed cutter is faster now, but other than that, nothing has changed. Diddy did not beat the allegations, Drake did not beat the allegations, but somehow Moog, Lord of Blood, did. You know who else did? The Offhand Great Katana. Some fool, some absolute buffoon named SR Creo made a video called Elden Ring Offhand Great Katanas. And you know what he said? He said they're not good for invasions. What that buffoon, that absolute fool, did not recognize is that the Rakshasa got hyper armor on its attacks, making it the perfect weapon for the setup. Unsubscribed, unliked, unshared, DiGiorno, Hotel Trivago. Yeah, but all jokes aside, the setup is actually pretty fucking good with the offhand Rakshasa. I didn't realize that it got hyper armor because the fucking Dragon Hunter and the regular Great Katana don't really have any, so you get knocked out of attacks pretty easily. But it's pretty fucking hard to get knocked out of attacks when you use the Rakshasa, which is pretty nice because before when I was using the setup, I was using the Dragon Hunter Great Katana, an okay weapon when you're fucking two-handing it, but not that good in the offhand. And I was just getting fucking knocked out of attacks constantly, so I kind of came to the conclusion, I'm like, man, I don't really think this is good for invasions. And I hadn't really tested the Rakshasa because of the effect it has where you take extra damage and you get this Riri effect. I'm like, man, that doesn't seem good at all. I don't think you need to test it because it has the effect on it. But to counter the fact that it has that effect, it has insane hyper armor. Which makes sense, now thinking about it, because the Rakshasa armor, you take more damage, but you do more damage. So it's kind of a balance. It's like, alright, you can do more damage, but you're going to take more damage. And with this weapon, it's like, alright, you'll be less likely to be knocked out of attacks, but you'll take more damage because of what you're wielding. And that whole effect overall, I think, is a good thing, really. Like, I wish that all the fucking Great Katanas just had the same amount of fucking hyper armor on their swings. In Dark Souls 3, when you were using a offhand Great Axe, for the most part, it didn't really matter what you were using. Like, you had an offhand Great Axe, so you were going to be able to swing. But with the Great Katanas in this game, it's like, if you're going to put one in your offhand, you might as well just put the Rakshasa every single time. Well, I guess not every single time now that I think about it, because this weapon has like 27 dex requirement and 12 strength requirement, and has a B scaling in dex and D scaling in strength, so not every time, but if you're rocking a dex build or a quality build and you want to do this setup, you're pretty much just better off doing the Rakshasa every single time. Going back to how I said, I think it's a good balance. I think it is a nice thing to where, okay, you're really hard to knock out of attacks, but because of that you take more damage. Meaning you're less likely to want to stand there and just keep swinging. If you put on so many health, then it's fine, it's whatever. But, thinking from a PvE standpoint of using this weapon two-handed, it's nice. That's the nice thing about it. It's just when it comes to PvP, it's kind of like, eh. I wish that didn't happen, but PvE, I think it's a nice thing. The thing though with the Rakshasa being the best in-slot item for this setup really is that it kind of primarily makes it a dex kind of setup. Going back to Dark Souls 3 with the offhand Great Axe, if you saw someone using the offhand Great Axe setup, you knew they had to be either a quality or a strength build, or just a really weird dex build. And for the most part, you wouldn't encounter the dex builds using that, so it was primarily just a strength and quality thing. And in this game with the offhand Great Katana, if you see someone rocking the Rakshasa, okay, so this person's a dex build. And that doesn't really fucking do anything when you're like looking at your opponent, like, oh, I know they're rocking this build. And that doesn't really mean anything, it means it's less variety, because it's like, alright, if you want to use this build, your best option is a dex build, and if you're making a PvP build, you're not going to be constantly knocked out of attacks, you want some kind of hyper armor, so you're going to use the Rakshasa. And obviously that doesn't apply to everybody. I mean, there's definitely going to be some people who are going to just put the regular Great Katana fucking heavy infused or fire infused or whatever on a setup, or maybe they'll do the Dragon Hunter, their quality build. You know, that doesn't, what I said doesn't mean like, oh, everybody's gonna do that. It's just like, alright, if you want like the best possible, you're gonna do the best possible. The options you can have main-handed though are overall pretty much the same. In the video I originally made about this setup, I tested a lot of the stuff and found that any R1 faster than a Claymore R1 works for the setup. So that invites a lot of things for people to use. And in the clips you'll see I pretty much do just the Sword of Night and the Milady, but I mix it up and use the Falx at some point. But those are just because those are my favorite things for this setup. But you can pretty much use fucking anything that has an R1 faster than a Claymore, which is nice, because it adds that little bit of variety that I feel like a setup needs. You know, if you're gonna do a setup where your offhand is pretty much gonna just be the same thing every time, you're gonna want some nice variety in the main hand, which is why like this setup works, but also why off stock is such a good setup, because you can put a fucking off stock in your offhand, and then your main hand can be pretty much anything else. One of the things I'm always curious about though, when I pick up an item in this game, whether it be a fucking key item, a goddamn consumable, or a weapon, is the etymology behind the name. Like what's the reason that this was named what it was? And when I picked up Rakshasa shit, I'm like, alright, what the hell is the idea behind this? And googling it, I learned that a Rakshasa is a type of demon or goblet in Hindu mythology. They have the power to shapeshift at will. And they can shapeshift into a lot of things, but in the case of a female Rakshasa, it's always a pretty woman. And I'm like, alright, is a Rakshasa NPC a pretty woman underneath? And she is. If you unmask the NPC, you can see that it's a woman underneath. And I'm like, alright, like, is this just a Rakshasa, or is it like that her name? And the descriptions for the items, like her armor and her weapon, describe it as like her, that's her name. Like they capitalize the R in Rakshasa, which could mean, you know, that that's just her name and that they were inspired by the demon, like the lore of the demon. But it also, I feel like, could mean like she's like the Rakshasa. Like that's almost like a title that was given to her, which to me sounds a lot cool. I like the idea that she was just called that, like that wasn't her name, that she was just given that title. Going back to the clips you can see in this video though, my teammate is using the offhand scythe. And that's a setup that's interested me for a bit, because apparently true combos now with certain things. I haven't tested it myself, but I want to. Just because, you know, it sounds right up my alley. But, you know, I didn't before. Just because it wasn't fast enough. But, you know, they made it faster when they updated the game. Like right before the DLC dropped. And, you know, they added a bunch of PvP rebalances. So apparently a true combo now, which is cool. The people in this clip are alright. I mean, they left the Tantra's Tongue on, which is nice, so like my teammate didn't have to worry about being all alone in this cave with them. But they're kind of annoying. The host is using that one meter spell, which I fucking hate. I hate that spell when meter uses it, and I hate the spell when players use it. It's not fun. You know how I say though, there are two wolves inside you? Inside you are two invaders. One that does this, and one that managed to clutch out this invasion with 3 people. When I spawned into this world, in this invasion, these 3 guys were down by the furnace golems, and they're by that guy. They're fighting him. Like, I should probably go down there, you know, to help with the furnace golem. But as I was about to jump down, they killed him. I'm like, alright, I'm not gonna go down there then, because there's no mobs there. I'll just be one guy down there with 3 mobs. And the host, you know, he starts shooting at me with a great bow. But we down it with golem arrows, with Radon arrows. I'm like, alright, I don't think he really knows why the great bow works for getting people to come at you. Like, it's the golem arrows that are the real thing there, it's not the bow. But so I'm like, alright, I'm gonna put on the concealing veil. I'm gonna fucking, you know, disappear on the map. So hopefully they're like, alright, I guess the invaders running towards us. We'll go try to catch them off guard. And it works, you know, I hide, they don't know where I am, they run out to these mobs. And these horned warriors are crazy. Like, I remember on my fucking first playthrough of the DLC, I'm like, man, these guys are gonna be good co-invaders, and sure enough they are. I mean, he got that guy right there. He's gonna get the host eventually, but you know, it's me and this Phantom. This Phantom, I like his setup. He has the 2 spears. You know, clearly he's gone to the game to get them. So who the hell goes out of their way to fucking kill Celeria just so they can drop their friend a fucking weapon, right? Like, he definitely, like, went through the game to get this shit. So I fuck with him, and he was trying to do his thing. This host, though, this host was annoying the hell out of me. He was sitting there shooting me with great arrows, and I'm like, alright, man, fuck this shit. Like, the host is the guy I like least in this invasion. But, you know, now we get him on the run, you know, he doesn't know what the hell's going on, clearly. The end of this invasion, though, is great. We do this. Double true combo with the goddamn PvE, bitch. That's what it's about. Anyway, see you guys.